This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Sports Fix Universe, support your boy J-Rocc. Show some pride for the 216. Pick up a brand new J-Rocc Daddy t-shirt from ProWrestlingTees.com. Just go to ProWrestlingTees.com/J-Rocc. J-R-O-C-C, and pick up a brand new t-shirt today. Show some love, support the 216, and give it up one time for J-Rocc on ProWrestlingTees.com.
Sports Fix listeners, do you tweet? So do we. So tweet with us 24/7 at the Sports Fix CLE.
Hey guys, J-Rocc here from the Sports Fix, and we always talking about using our platform to try to help the world and the society we live in, and everywhere I go and everywhere we go, bullying is one of the problems in today's society. There's nothing worse than any person, big or small, strong or weak, adult or child, feeling picked on, pushed around, vulnerable, and victimized at the hands of a bully. Change comes one person at a time, and my good friends at No Such Thing as a Bully are working on skills and techniques and ways that we can all change and make things better for everyone. Find out more at nosuchthingasabully.com.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Catch every UFC pay-per-view live in full HD at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
And away we go. We are live, off and running, off into the month of August. We're about to hit the dog days of summer, and the Indians are fixing to hit it. That's for sure. They hit it the other day at the trade deadline. We're going to talk about it as we get rocking and rolling, cracking the month of August open here on the Sports Fix. J-Rocc here, and we're going to get rolling with Dan Wismar, my man from EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Dan will be with us here in just a little bit, just about 25, 30 minutes from now, but we're going to crack open the phone lines. Already had the phones ringing before we even got on the air. We're going to crack open the phone lines, talk to you guys. We've got a lot to do as the Browns got a lot to do. They got started on training camp, and they're getting rocking and rolling. We've got the Indians, the trade deadline. We're going to talk all about how the Indians did, perhaps you think, did not improve their chances. They definitely took a shot at it. Went and got the lefty that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, Andrew Miller, and almost did a whole lot more before Mr. Lou Croy said, I'm not coming to Cleveland. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk Browns. We're going to talk Tribe. Buckeyes getting rolling. And we'll talk all about Coach Meyer and what he had to say the other day. Dan Wismar is going to join us for that. You guys are going to hit the phones. We have got a ton of things to do. Let's not even deliberate any longer. Let's get rocking and rolling. Welcome into the Sports Fix, my friends, across the Sports Fix Radio Network. I am your host, the big daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers. Call me any of the above, but you better call me happy to be here. So cliche, but so true. Each and every time we get to do the Sports Fix, and here we are. It's been 2 weeks. We're back at it today. Like I said, across the radio network. Maybe that means you're enjoying us live on TuneIn.com. TuneIn's digital and mobile and radio apps across the world. Such a great place to stream us live, real time, right here when we're doing the thing, or on demand 24/7. Perhaps you're enjoying the show live on Spreaker, Spreaker.com, their respective digital and mobile apps, maybe right on our home base, thesportsfix.net. Make sure you bookmark it if you haven't. It's a great backup for any of the sites that you listen to the show live. You can always jump right on our website and stream it. Doesn't even have to click a button. It just comes down to you, thesportsfix.net. Plus, it's got all the banners and all of our great sponsors, the people that help make this happen free of charge for you guys each and every time we drop one. So check it out. Bookmark it today, thesportsfix.net as well. Shout out to those of you guys listening in Union City, Pennsylvania, 96.7 WFSN on Saturdays. Welcome into my cats out in Union City. I'll be coming your way. Talk to you about that in a moment. Wrestling, I'm going to be all over the state of Pennsylvania in the next couple of weeks up there doing the wrestling thing, but we'll get into that some more. Welcome everybody on WFSN as well. Shout out to the thousands of you guys listening around the world 24/7 and I mean time zones and area codes all over the globe, on digital delay on sites like iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, on SoundCloud and CarPlay, and all of the different places that you guys download and feed and subscribe and do the doohickeys to get your fix. Thank you guys so much for doing it. I say it all the time. You guys are the voice, the heart, the soul. You guys are the Sports Fix. Thank you guys so much for doing it, for being with us, and be with us now. Phones are open, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. Definitely going to try to get a call or two in here before Dan. Can't get to the phone, listening on your phone perhaps? Hey, Facebook, Twitter, email is the way to do it. Pruitt, baby. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter, at The Sports Fix, CLE. Email The Sports Fix at AOL.com. Let's hear your thoughts on any of the above. The Indians, the Browns, hell, the Cavs. They got James Jones back in the fold, by the way. That just went down. You want to talk Buckeyes? Hit us up. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter, at The Sports Fix, CLE. And you can email us, The Sports Fix at AOL.com, and we're going to get rocking and rolling here. Couple of things. Let's do some business, pay some bills here early on. Matter of fact, the fun part of paying bills, the Fantasy Football Challenge, the Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge, to be specific. It's going to lock and load and come your way. As always, right here, you guys, the chance to sign up over the next few weeks. I've already heard from a couple of you in the preliminaries here. Continue to hit us up if you're interested in being a part of this year's Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge, brought to you by FantasyJocks.com. If you're looking to be a part of it, we're going to have, obviously, more entries than we have spots, as we only go I think we're going 14 deep this year in the leagues. So we're going to do a random drawing. But if you want your name up in the mix to even be a part of it, then hit us up. Email thesportsfix at AOL.com. Hit me on the social media. Say, J-Rocc Daddy, I want to be a part of the Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge. It's always a ton of fun. The draft will be right before the kickoff of the season so that it's most fair for everybody. And we will have more details as we get down the road closer. Matter of fact, you guys realize that until February, there's no more weekends without some kind of football, even though I find preseason football hard-pressed to call football. But it's some form of football. There's a pigeon being tossed. It starts with the Hall of Fame game here coming up, and then, boom, it'll be February again before there's no football. It seemed like it would be forever, but, when the Cavs are winning championships, you kind of forget that there's no football being played, and the Indians have sure helped keep that going as well. But now football's back. Fantasy football's back, and we're going to do the. Speaking of, we're going to get my man BJ Riddell back in the conversation over the next few weeks and start getting you ready for your fantasy football drafts, whether they're with us or wherever they are. But if you want to be a part of the Sports Fix Fantasy Football Challenge, message us over the next couple of weeks. We will begin the process of selecting entrants and letting you know, and then we're going to rock and roll with this year's Fantasy Football Challenge. Justin Beavers won the championship belt last year. Let's see if he can defend his title. He beat my son in the championship game. Let's see if he can defend that title here this year as well. Told you guys I'm going to be all over the state of Pennsylvania the next couple of weeks. If you're into the wrestling thing, Erie, Pennsylvania on the 13th, Meadville at the Crawford County Fair. That's always a big one. Thousands of people there checking that one out. Come on out on the 20th. It'll be an afternoon show in Meadville at the Crawford County Fair. And I'm back in West Newton, Pennsylvania on the 27th. So 3 straight weekends I'll be dipping in and out of Pennsylvania. If you guys are up that way and you want to get a chance to see me wrestle, come on out, and I'll have all the information on my social media as always. And if you love J-Rocc Daddy and the pro wrestling thing, hey, do me a favor and go pick up a shirt from ProWrestlingTees.com/J-Rocc, JROCC. It's my personal store. It's one of the only places that has stores built for all of the professional wrestlers that are theirs. It's their merchandise, it's their money, it's all handled, controlled, done by the wrestlers themselves. No third parties, nobody being ripped off. ProWrestlingTees.com/J-Rocc. Pick up one of 4 incredible, brand new J-Rocc Daddy t-shirts, or there's literally thousands of t-shirts from some of your favorite wrestlers all over the planet through every time period, you name it. there's something there for you. But hey, go check it out. ProWrestlingTees.com/J-Rocc. All right, guys, so let's get. You know what? One more thing I wanted to plug, and this one's just a personal one. My man, our friend Vince McKee, the author, and I'm looking to get Vince here with us here in the next couple of weeks because he just dropped his brand new book, All In: The Story of LeBron James and the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers NBA champions. It's fantastic. It just hit on Amazon and bookstores all over, and it is all in, baby. It is the story of the season. It is the official championship book. My man Vince McKee, you can check him out on Twitter at Vince the Author. And the reason I bring it up is to give Vince a quick plug, but say, hey, all in. The Indians clearly have followed that advice because the Cleveland Indians, they almost went all in until nature ripped them back, but they rolled them dice like the Indians haven't done in, I can't even remember when. I mean, they went and got Ubaldo a few years back, if you remember that, but even that felt a little different, even though there was a high price to be paid there, most definitely. The Cleveland Indians, the first one, the big one, they went and got Andrew Miller, the left-handed specialist out of the back end of the bullpen from the New York Yankees. We had talked about how that was the target, was a left-handed piece for the back of the pen, but particularly Andrew Miller. And the Indians, when so many people doubted that they would, the Indians went and, boy, they paid a price. They almost, I'll tell you what, before the second trade got vetoed, the Indians had reamed the top of their farm system, which is, hey, you got a deal from positions of strength, and the Indians' positions of strength were starting pitching and depth in the farm system. How long, by the way, has it been since depth in the farm system was a strength for the Cleveland Indians? But they used that strength and they used that depth to go out there and try to make this team much, much better. They went and got Andrew Miller, and as I said, it came at a price, the biggest being outfielder Clint Frazier, who was definitely destined, I think, for big things, or at least potentially, and that's where you never know. It takes years for these things to show themselves out when you see how the prospects tuned out, how the trade worked as far as did it pay immediate dividends. Hey, if the Indians win a World Series, I'm pretty sure they'll take that over anything that could happen with these guys in the future. But the package also included Justice Sheffield, Ben Heller, and another right-handed pitcher. 4 prospects shipped out to the Yankees for Andrew Miller. And the reason the package was so steep was, there was a lot of competition for Miller, but also he was not a pure rental in the case as it would have been for so many other guys, including Aroldis Chapman. With Miller, he's under club control for the next couple of seasons. So that is different because you have traded for a piece that is theoretically going to be a part of not 1, not 2, but perhaps 3 at least championship runs per se as the Indians head for it. So it was definitely a piece of need, and they really tried to keep using that phrase all in, tried to do it by momentarily also acquiring Jonathan Lucroy from the Milwaukee Brewers for another package of prospects, including Francisco Milla, by the way, the catcher who is on the 43 game hitting streak down there right now. But had he been included, it looked like the Indians were about to deal away pretty much. I think we had figured it out. It was 5 or 6 of the top 10 prospects in the organization were getting ready to go out as the Indians had made the deal. It was done, but one of the 8 teams, there was an 8-team no-trade clause that Lucroy had, and one of those was the Indians, and for reasons only known to Lucroy, he could not, or he would not accept the trade. He declined it. Now, I had read, I didn't hear this from anybody, but I had read some people that supposedly were on the inside said that he was not happy with the situation of whether or not he would have been the catcher next season because, of course, Gomes is a part of that conversation. The Indians have already made their commitment to Yan Gomes, who still potentially could even return this season. So, a lot of Cleveland Twitter, I love you fellas and ladies, but man, they went to town on Jonathan Lucroy. And then I saw some people say, oh, well, why didn't he turn it down to the Rangers? He didn't have a choice when he was then subsequently traded to the Rangers. The Rangers were not one of the teams he could turn a trade down for, so he had no choice but to go there. He still ended up going to a team with a chance, but he had a shot to come and catch one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. But I slow everybody down that wants to jump on him right away, because it's not like maybe he did. Maybe he went home and said, Cleveland? Nah, I don't think so. But that's so easy for you to fantasize. But hey, you go home after being at work and go, honey, I got to tell you something. I just got traded to some place that you never thought about living before, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, you have no idea what considerations there were family-wise and other obligations. So, to just hate on a guy for turning it down would be, to me, kind of simplistic. But that's what Twitter does, man, and I love it. They flamed, or not Andrew Miller. They love Andrew Miller. They flamed Jonathan Lucroy. Jimenez got on and said, boy, this could get funny, and it will get interesting when these two teams hook up. When the Tribe heads down to Texas, because my man will be sitting right in their face. But for whatever the reason, he turned down the chance to come to the Indians. So to me, as much as I would have loved to have seen us add another bat, lengthen out that lineup a little bit, because we have got the black hole going at catcher right now as far as offensive production. Totally understand it, but you still had the Yan Gomes equation to figure out eventually. And again, such a truckload in prospects that, to me, when the trade was rescinded, when it went back, when it didn't happen, I almost felt better about it than I did when it did happen. And sometimes you get a second bite at the apple and you go, you know what, maybe he did us a favor. I'm not saying, hey, anybody that is going to come here hitting 300 and being able to handle the stick as well as behind the plate, most definitely. But, the Indians, as I said, Gomes has been their guy. He signed for 3 more seasons with a couple of more options. There was a lot more to the back end of that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because my man chose not to come to Cleveland. But the Indians were going for it. That is for sure. And they need to. The Detroit Tigers coming out of left field. The Tigers who everybody had written off. And we'll get more into this here with Dan when he joins us in just about 10 minutes. But here, the Tigers have gone, 7 in a row right now. As we tape this today, the Tigers have won 7 in a row. They've closed the gap in the division to 3 games. And meanwhile, it's double digits over everybody else. Kansas City's back 10 games. Speaking of teams that are way back, how about the Minnesota Twins? Kicking the Indians' tail right now. The last couple of days, they've put double-digit crooked numbers on the scoreboard. Indians burst off with that big inning yesterday, but other than that, they have just been befuddled, not just in this series, but this season, by the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins, 4-7 this year. The Indians, 4-7 against the Twins, 56-37 against everybody else. And when you look at the Indians, the Twins, they bat 25 points higher against the Indians than they do against every other team. Their slugging percentage is 100 points higher against the Indians than it is against any other team. It's insane. Same thing with the pitching. I mean, it's not one category. To a man, to a factor, to a category, the Twins just seem to have the number of the Indians. The Indians are 26-8 against the rest of the Central Division while having a losing record, albeit 4-7 against the Twins. Miller's in the fold now. The Indians have you know what? We're going to get into that in just a moment. I want to get to the phones because I've got Dan coming on in just a few minutes. We've still got a ton more to get into. Haven't even scratched the surface on the show. We're going to talk some Browns camp with Dan. We're going to talk more about the Indians' moves at the trade deadline. But right now, I want to talk to you. Caller, kick us off on the Sports Fix.
How is that?
Hello, caller.
Beautiful. How is that svelte-looking wrestler doing these days? I mean, I can't believe the shape you are in, Big Daddy.
Hey, this is my man, Big Bob. Big Bob?
Big Bob. How you doing,
Bob
Big
from
Daddy?
Bristol, Connecticut. How you doing? And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
You are looking svelte out there. I'm telling you. You are looking good.
I'm doing what I can, Big Bob. How about the Indians doing what they can, man? How about it?
Who'd ever thunk it? with this young Indians pitching staff and baseball team. They're just playing unbelievable baseball. But then again, look who we have in that dugout. We got Terry Francona, Brad Mills, Sandy Alomar, and these young Indians are playing unbelievable team baseball. Fabulous baseball.
I agree, Big Bob. I wanted to ask you, you were one that didn't want the Indians to necessarily ream out the farm system. I'll tell you, they definitely, they were really going for it, and one of the two trades comes back, so it wasn't as deep, but they still gave up Frazier, they gave up Sheffield, they gave up a package to get Andrew Miller from the Yankees. But I mean, do you think that piece is going to be enough to push the Indians through when we get to October baseball?
Oh, it's going to push us through. We were going to do it with Andrew or without him. That is my words. That is my gut feeling. And like I've always said, we have X factors on this young Indians ball club. You know, we've got McAllister, we've got Anderson, and now we got little Davy Crockett, that little slippery left-hander who I think is going to really come on strong for us till the end of the season and many more seasons to come. So with Andrew or without him, I think we were going to do it. But with Andrew in there, you know, that solidifies our bullpen, to the umpteenth measure. And in a way, I am glad that, Jonathan didn't come aboard, because that would have been 4, 5, or 6 more prospects that we would have been depleted in our farm system. And as far as I'm concerned, we have a log jam at catcher. You know, Jan is going to come back strong. We got Perez, and we have that other catcher that is doing great behind the plate and doing great with our starting pitching and our bullpen too. So we're okay, and we're going to the World Series. That's all I got to say.
Well, I think the Indians still have some work to do to put this thing together. I think that it'll be a work in progress the next couple of months to constitute a bullpen.
Always have work.
I like
to do,
the attitude.
Always have work.
Well, I like the attitude, though. The attitude of Miller, the attitude of Allen. Terry Francona was talking about that when the first thing Cody Allen did before the trade was walk up to the front office and say, hey, I don't care if it replaces me, if I've got to go to a different spot in the bullpen, whatever makes this team better. And
what a team player that is.
Hey, that's super team player stuff
there. What a
there.
nucleus this young Indians team has. And that's the big thing that sets us apart. We have young Indians players that have played together now for 3, 4, 5 years. That's how you make a team.
Now that being said, and I agree, Bruce in the chat room sent me a comment here. I have to agree that, the catchers are handling their business behind the plate, but as far as at the bat, that remains the whole. And that's why so many people were desperate to get a guy like Lucroy. Absolutely, Perez is hitting less than 100. He's hitting like 060 or something like that. But at the same time, see, I hold out faith in Gomes, but that doesn't do you any good for the next couple of months. And I definitely get that. And that's where you're going to need, and that's where it hurts you. We haven't even touched on losing a guy like Salazar, which hopefully you hope is a shorter term thing, a couple of weeks, and luckily there was no structural damage. But I got to tell you, and Bob, I've got to go here in a minute, but talking about Salazar, I knew something was wrong. I mean, he gave up 7 home runs in his last 5 starts. He only gave up 6 the whole season before that. Yeah. So you definitely had an issue there, but that the pitching is going to be even more important, and being able to hold those leads later in the games, being able to have your starters give you 6 strong and then say, here, go finish this off, is going to be key, especially while we're still dancing around perhaps some holes in the lineups. You got the Brantley question. Will he resurface? You've got, who knows what happens with the waiver trade deadline over the next 30 days as well. It'll be very interesting to see when we get out of the month of August what the Indians look like and what kind of lead they have, assuming they can hold off the Tigers, the hard-charging Tigers, by the way.
Right. They're charging, but we're going to hold them off. I'm just worried about the Twinkies. This is 2 years now in a row. I don't know if we're overlooking them or, like you said, if they have our number. But I think old Trevor Eddie Bauer is going to calm
You know
their
what?
bats tonight.
The only two teams that the Twins have winning records against this season are the Indians and Texas. So it's like, does that make any sense? They're like the worst team in baseball, except
Not at
when
all,
they
but
play
that's baseball.
us.
That's it.
All right. Big Bob, my man, I've got to keep it moving. I appreciate it.
Okay, brother. Listen, you keep on looking the way you're looking, baby, and keep wrestling the way you're wrestling.
I definitely appreciate the kind words, my friend.
Love you guys, and Bruce, and please say hello to Vince for me.
You got it,
and
my
his
man.
great books.
All right, that's my man. Have a good one, my man.
You too. Bye-bye.
My man, Big Bob from Bristol, Connecticut. Great to hear from him. Hasn't called live in months. It's great to catch up with him. You hear that? Oh, they're kung fu fighting a little Carl Douglas. It makes sense. The training camp is open. They're kung fu fighting each other out there in Berea. The Indians are dog fighting in the dog days for a spot here in the big dance at the end of the season. Man, we're going to get into it. Buckeyes, they got some camping going on too. We're going to go camping. We'll talk some football, talk Indians trade deadline moves. Is Dan Wismar happy with what they did? What does he think is about to go down? We're going to talk Indians, Browns, Buckeyes, who knows what else with Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland. It's coming up next. 5 minutes from now. Do not go anywhere. Here comes some news, and Dan Wismar joins us. We're going to reopen the phone lines after Dan, so sit tight. If you tried to get in and you couldn't, we'll pick the phones back up for you in a moment. In the meantime, don't go anywhere. News, then Dan Wismar, and we're back live next on the Sports Fix.
A slip and a kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. Yeah. But they fought with expert timing.
The Sports Fix.
A shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
The Sports Fix.
A young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
The fix is in. The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events, Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo. And let me tell you, I've been there. The people are out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
This is head coach Gary Waters at Cleveland State, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now,
Fight fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, eat up, y'all. You this good church-going folk. Y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd. Fantasy sports lovers, you put so much time, hard work, and effort into playing week to week that it quickly stops being a fantasy and starts getting real. And when the smoke clears, you want to show off those victories with a real prize. I mean, a really real prize. Nobody does that like Fantasy Jocks. The crew over at Fantasy Jocks have beautiful, high-quality, and heavy-duty championship belts, rings, trophies, and so much more for all your fantasy sports needs. There's literally only one place to go. FantasyJocks.com. Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
News break.
This is John Feinstein with a CBS Sports Minute brought to you by Ford. Now that the baseball trade deadline is passed and virtually every team with any chance to play postseason has made a deal or deals to strengthen itself, it's worth remembering that it will be years before anyone knows who the real winners and losers were. Some results will be apparent by October. Someone will win the World Series and a deadline pickup may play a key role. Or, as in the case last year of Yoenis Cespedes, a summer pickup might take a long-suffering team to the World Series. But the long-term question, which traded prospects will pan out, won't be answered for a good long while. Best example of that? In 1987, the Detroit Tigers needed a starting pitcher to make a run for the American League East title. They picked up Doyle Alexander from the Braves for a prospect. Alexander went 9-0 and the Tigers won the division. Oh, the prospect? John Smoltz. I'm John Feinstein.
This is Doug Gottlieb with the CBS Sports Minute, brought to you by National Association of Realtors. Get Realtor. In a recent interview with Sports Illustrated, LeBron James said he's motivated by the ghost that he's chasing. That ghost, of course, is Michael Jordan. Jordan was 6-0 in the NBA Finals. And because LeBron James has lost several NBA Finals, some think that's not an obtainable goal. While Jordan was 6-0 in the NBA Finals, he never played a historically great team in those NBA Finals. As opposed to LeBron, went to 4 NBA Finals in 4 years, and now has been back in Cleveland and overcame a 3-1 deficit, beating a 73-win team. Coming from 3-1 down once against the Golden State Warriors is magnificent historical stuff. But what if he beats the Warriors again next year? As of today, Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time. There's no argument. But just like the season doesn't end today, neither does the argument. I'm Doug Gottlieb.
There's something kind of about a kid that's never played baseball.
Throwing you the best sports commentary in town. The Sports Fix.
Welcome back into the Sports Fix. J-Rocc back with you here, kicking it across the Sports Fix Radio Network. However you're enjoying us on TuneIn, on Spreaker, on the sportsfix.net, on WFSN 96.7, on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, on all of the different places, however you're doing the thing, getting your fix. Thank you for being with us. Speaking of being with us, Dan Wismar from EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. He's going to be with us in just a few moments, and we're going to talk his thoughts on the Indians at the trade deadline. And, you know, I had to hit the break there talking to Big Bob when I opened phones. And, by the way, we're going to open the phones back up for you guys here about 30 minutes from now after Dan joins us, and we'll get you back in on the conversation. I know we missed a couple of calls earlier while we were doing the first segment, but a lot of, and you know what? Just like we didn't talk about it heading into the break, a lot of it blew past people in Cleveland because they were still focused on Jonathan Lucroy, and I loved how the sentiment went right away to figure the Indians wouldn't do nothing else. And putting together a trade like that takes some work, and when it falls through day of, it's not like you can just go back to the table with another team. And a matter of fact, at that point, teams are really bending you over the raking you over the coals even more, because they know you just lost a trade that you had figured out or whatever, so on and so forth. And so they know you're even more desperate, and their teams are dealing with you in more of a desperation mode. So, but another one that kind of slipped by, people said, oh, typical Indians. And in a matter of an hour, it went from going all in to typical Indians. They made a smaller trade with the Rays, and they got Brandon Geyer. And a lot of people say, oh, well, who's this guy? But he is a role-type player that can most definitely help the Indians in their push for the postseason. This is a guy who's a platoon guy. He's not going to be your everyday guy, but against left-handed pitching, he can most definitely rake. He's done it his entire career. He's a .285 batter against left-handed pitching, but this season he's particularly dialed in. Even though he's played, I think, about 60 games, he had some injury issues last month, but he's hitting nearly .350 this season against left-handed pitching. So that's a guy that can fit a very niche role and help the Indians. Those are the types of moves that contenders go make that slip under the radar. And when you combine that with what they went and did, they went and got Miller. And again, we'll see how things flesh themselves out in the meantime with the remainder of the questions they have with the lineup, but that was one that I had failed to mention. I mean, there's definite value there. That's not just Aaron Cunningham getting picked up. And matter of fact, Don Annis on our Facebook page was hey, you know, not to pick on guys, not to pick on Don, I love him, but him and a couple of other guys were the guys I was referring to that instantly, like sharks that smelled blood in the water. An hour earlier, the Indians had traded 10 prospects. They had gutted the top part of the farm system. They were going all in, and the guy changes his mind, says, I don't want to come to Cleveland. And an hour later, cats are on the Sports Fix Facebook page just reaming the Indians and the cheap Dolans again. And I'm like, how? This is not the Indians' fault. The Indians went out and did exactly what you wanted them to do. But then people were mad that, you know, with 3 hours to go, they couldn't put something else together. And I had kind of thought they may go back to the Yankees and go after Beltran, who ended up going to Texas. But I just figured since those two teams had already talked, and you had the Miller conversations and the Chapman conversations, you figure they were pretty familiar with who wanted what and what prospects were in this conversation, who hadn't been traded earlier, who the Yankees really still wanted. I thought maybe that might open the doors to something there for the Tribe, but didn't work out that way. Lots of movement, too. There were guys traded all over the place, and it'll be interesting to see. And as you heard during the break there, as they talked about the trade deadline moves, and I mentioned this in the first segment, it's always years before you find out, because does the contender that makes the trade get what they needed out of it? Most of the time, it doesn't help. Occasionally, it does, absolutely. But a lot of the times, it ends up not making the needle move. I think Miller is different. That's something because it makes the needle move for several seasons as well. But and Bruce in the chat room on Beltran, he's a DH. I agree. No, I absolutely. I thought that the Indians may. I'll be honest with you, I thought they may get desperate themselves when the Lucroy trade fell through. But anyways, getting back to that, we'll see what the Indians do, and we'll talk some more about that here with Dan when he joins us in just a little bit. You guys can keep the conversation going. Facebook, Twitter, email, facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixCLE, email thesportsfix @AOL.com, Facebook.com/thesportsfix, Twitter @thesportsfixCLE, email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Phone's not open right now. We're waiting on Dan, but you can call us anytime. 216-539-7535, the number to call. 216-539-7535. You can leave your message on our hotline, and we'll play it at our next opportunity, or you can call us live at the top of the hour after Dan joins us, because on the hotline now is my main man from Everybody Hates Cleveland, Dan Wismar, on the hotline. Dan, how you doing this afternoon? Oh, you know what? I lost him. Just as quickly as I had him, I lost him. So we'll see if we can get Dan back in. Let's try this again. On the magical Sports Fix hotline, I've got my man Dan Wismar. Dan, are you with me?
Yes, I am. You're picking up a little bit there, Jared, but I'm with you.
All right. How you doing, my friend? It's been 2 weeks.
I'm doing
Welcome
fine,
back.
yeah. I apologize. I just got held up, and I was just held up for a couple minutes. Sorry about getting in a little bit late.
Oh, you're good, man. It's been about 2 weeks since we've done the thing. How have you been doing in the meantime?
Doing fine. Up until this latest little bump in the road for our tribe here, been doing great.
You know what? That's good. I'm glad you started with the Indians because that's kind of where we were in the conversation before the break, and I'll start right with you. What are your thoughts on the Indians' moves at the trade deadline and how they sit now? They went and got Miller. We didn't know if they would go and make a big deal like that. How shocked were you that the Indians went and made that trade? And Lucroy, even though he didn't come to Cleveland.
Well, I was a little bit surprised to see them part with Clint Frazier. We're obviously happy to get Miller, but I was I guess resigned to the fact that you're going to have to give up either Zimmer or Frazier, one or the other. I'm not real sure. Obviously, nobody knows which guy's going to turn out to be the better major leaguer. They both have their upside, but you gotta give it to the organization, no matter what happens. You've got to hand it to the organization for pulling the trigger, hand it to ownership, and hopefully end the Dollinger cheap narrative once and for all. That they stepped up to the plate and did it, and so you got to give them that. As far as Lucroy goes, it's unfortunate they ended up with a team that may be a playoff foe of ours coming down the road. But you also got to side, I guess, a little bit with the player. He had his leverage, he used it. I don't know if he ended up benefiting. I guess that he has some ties down south and probably is happy to be located down there. But
he didn't have a choice. He didn't have a choice in Texas. Texas was not on his list of teams he could veto. So
right. I do understand that, and he could have just easily gone to 18 other baseball teams.
And let me ask you about that real quick, Dan, because, I mean, he became public enemy number one very quickly across Indians Twitter, across social media, everywhere. But I mentioned it earlier in the show. And, hey, maybe the guy went home and him and his wife said, I'm never going to Cleveland. But I think it's such a big assumption. I mean, when you've got families, hey, that is, I said to everybody listening, and you, Dan, imagine going to work and then coming home at lunch and going, well, honey, we got to go to Cleveland tomorrow. I mean, that is not the easiest conversation to have. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Cleveland or Timbuktu.
Right, and my understanding is that his wife's from Louisiana. They have some ties down there in the South, and but bottom line, I think maybe he might have miscalculated a little bit, and you don't know how much of it is him and how much is his agent. But they had some leverage. They wanted to try to use the leverage to get a better deal out of Cleveland, to either get a long-term deal or to get that extra option year, waived.
And that's what I heard.
Something.
He wanted that extra year waived in order to agree to come to Cleveland.
Yeah, and I think what else came out of it was that he wasn't sure that he would have the guaranteed starting job next year. Well, I think that's ludicrous. I mean, of course he would have.
No, and I don't think that's a bad thing as a player.
Is he actually really seriously thinking that the Cleveland Indians organization is going to, trade for him and play him the rest of this year and then go back to their 160 hitting, starting catcher of this season and install him as the starter next spring? I don't think so. So to me, that was a little bit of a ludicrous thing, and maybe a little bit of a disingenuous kind of excuse for doing what he did. I think he may have also been thinking he could negotiate with the Cleveland Indians, or guarantee me this or guarantee me that or waive this year, and I think he was just maybe trying to do that with the wrong organization.
Yeah, that's all possible, and I guess until the whole story comes out, nobody will ever know. As far as I don't know, I disagree. I think as a player, I'm just thinking as an athlete myself, I wouldn't necessarily want to. I know what you're saying about the poor hitting of Gomes, but at the same time, Gomes has got a 4-5 year commitment from this organization beyond this season. That would give me pause to think that perhaps I was a rental, and who knows. But anyways, it doesn't matter. What's done is done. And now you've got an interesting storyline because the Indians are going to play Texas here in a little bit, and the potential of the playoffs and what could come down the road. I gotta tell you the truth though, Dan. Maybe this is why I don't look at it so harshly. Maybe I'm not mad at him because when the trade went back, I almost felt better about it because I still think Gomes is going to bounce back. I'm not saying he's going to do it this year, but I still think there's a lot to happen still with Gomes. But I felt better when we didn't give up so many prospects when you combine the two trades together.
That's true, and you know, I know that some of the people that follow it real closely are very high on Heller and the other kid that they gave up in the Andrew Miller trade, in addition to Justice Sheffield and Frazier, whom everybody knew about. I didn't know a lot about the other two kids. I had heard about Heller, and I knew that some people were high on him. But then giving up, you know, 4 more guys, including Greg Allen, including Francisco Media, who look like you know, future major leaguers themselves, to give up 8 guys or 9 or whatever it turned out to be to get Andrew Miller and a catcher, a reliever and a catcher, seems like an awful high price. And it's kind of a relief, like you say, to think, well, we gave up 4 prospects, but you look around at the prospects in our system that we didn't give up, and you feel a little bit better about it.
I mean, especially if you're like me, and obviously if you're not like me and you don't view catcher as a short-term problem, then maybe you're a little more upset. But I view catcher as a short-term problem, and I think it's penny-wise and pound-foolish to make that trade. And like you said, especially, I think, what was it? If you combine, depending on how you rank guys, it would have been, the top, at least 4 or 5 of the top prospects in the Indians organization, you know?
Well, I think most people have, you know, Frazier and Zimmer 1, 2, and then they have, you know, Media down around 5 and or so, and Greg Allen probably top 10.
At least a couple of top 10 guys, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd have been giving up maybe 3 to 4 of your top 10 prospects in that if you combine both deals.
Do you see catcher as a long-term problem or no?
Well, not really, because, you know, they have a fairly good, you know, farm system stocked right now with catchers, even at levels higher than Media. I'm not sure how you say his name, Maya. But you know, he's only a Lynchburg high A right now, and moved up this season from low A to high A during the season. In fact, in the middle of his hitting streak. By the way, I haven't heard anything today. Is his hitting streak still alive, or did they? He was at 43 last time I heard.
I don't know about today, but that's where I'm at too, 43.
Anyway, Perez, Gomes. You know, I like you have got to believe that, you know, John Gomes isn't a 160 hitter. You know, obviously when he comes back off the injury, hopefully they can do something. I thought all season that it was more of a mental thing with Jan Gomes, and he's already proven he can hit the big league level. So the fact that he was batting 160, and then it seemed like the lower his average dropped, the more hard luck he was hitting in, and hitting line drives at people every time up, and couldn't buy a break. So I think it just snowballed on him, and he needs to get his head, you know, straightened out once he gets his shoulder and his knee straightened out, and hopefully he can get back on track. I like him. I like him defensively, and I like Perez defensively. So I think, like you said, you're saying catching is a short-term problem, not a long-term one, is what I hear you saying. And I guess I would have to agree for the most part.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like I said, the Indians made the commitment. As you know, the Indians don't make commitments easily when it comes to money. The Indians made the long-term commitment. I mean, they have to believe that this guy's not a one-hit wonder behind the plate, and I kind of feel strongly the same way. So we'll see. But no, okay, that's a question for the future. Here we sit now, man. I'm obviously struggling a little bit here with the Twins, but taking that aside, how do you feel about now the way the Indians are positioned to head into the stretch run? They got the Tigers going on a run. I mean, here we're talking about other teams. Kansas City, Detroit's kind of the four, you know, behind the thought now. The Indians have been owning them, but here they come, 7 straight. They're the team, 3 games back. Everybody else is double digits away.
Well, yeah, and it really is a two-team race now, I think. And I was wondering, you know, after the deadline passed and after the Indians did the Miller trade, you had everybody all over the country, from Buster Olney to Tim Kirkjian and everybody and their brothers saying, okay, wow, the Indians are now the odds-on favorites to win the American League pennant. I think most people agree that the top teams in the National League, the Cubs, the Nationals, the Giants, are probably, quite likely, the 3 best teams in baseball right now. And the American League doesn't have the power teams, the super teams, like those teams sort of appear to be. But, you know, they were saying, and everybody across the country was saying, hey, it's the Indians. They're the favorites now. And I wondered to myself at the time, gee, I wonder how being the favorites will affect this team. How will they come out of the trade deadline? How will they play when they're the hunted instead of the hunter? And all of a sudden they're no longer under the radar and everybody's looking at them. And I don't think 2 games is a good sample size to judge that. I think this team has a lot of character, and they're coached by a guy who's been there. So I'm not going to jump to judgment, but let's face it, you don't win many games when you give up 10 runs a night.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the last 2 nights, you got to hope to be a bump in the road. But I thought even looking at the A's sweep, with the, even though Miller wasn't on the team yet, they had made the trade in the middle of the series, and I thought you could feel the energy almost until they hit Minnesota. I'm like, man, maybe this trade deadline really fired them, because we've seen the opposite. We've seen teams the Indians get their back broken in these seasons past, where they didn't make a deal and the players just kind of felt like the office walked away on them. But this time I thought, okay, maybe, especially when that third game they went out there and smashed Oakland and finished that one off. But then you hit this little bump here with the Twins, and again, you hope that that's just a blip. And you got the Salazar thing, and you could clearly see something was wrong with him. And this is the middle of the season. This is when you expect some dead arm issues. Perhaps you expect to see guys lose their focus. So it's curious to see how they bounce back from this little bump in the road with the Twins.
Yeah, no doubt. And the Twins, they've just had their numbers, 7 out of 11 now. And I was reading the other day that Texas has struggled with them too. Texas, the other team that you look at as maybe a favorite, they're 2-5, I understand, against the Twins this year. Maybe Indians need to change something after 2 games in the series about how they're pitching these guys. You got Babe Kepler there.
How about Kepler? Kepler's turned into Babe Ruth.
All of a sudden, this guy, he's an impressive-looking kid. Even the first couple times around, I don't even think he was in the lineup with him when we played him earlier in the season, or at least if he was pretty anonymous. But
he had 3 home runs the other day, man.
Yeah, and another one last night. So it's just absolutely crazy with him. But for some reason, the way you're pitching these Twins, you run arguably your 2 best starters out there at them, and they both got knocked around. This team needs a good starting pitching performance before the series is over. And tonight would not be too soon to start.
No, absolutely not. And I see. By the way, sorry, I just totally lost track. I had a message coming in here about the Indians, and I lost track. But I agree with you, and we'll see. What do they got? 1 more against the Twins here coming up in this series?
It's 2 more. It's 2 more. They got tonight and tomorrow. They have a new game tomorrow. And that'll wrap it up, and then they go out on the road again. But I think it's to New York, is it not? After
I'm sorry, everything has locked up on me. Yeah, we've got 2 more. We got Bauer, and then Clevenger gets the afternoon start against the Twins, and then you've got the Yankees, and that one will be good. You've got Tomlin and Pineda going on Friday. You've got Kluber and CeCe coming back home on Saturday, and then Carrasco and Tanaka wrapping that thing up on Sunday. That should be a good one.
Yeah, now I understand that, and the Tigers' schedule doesn't look real daunting. I took a look at that the other day. I think they've got Seattle now. After Chicago, they've got Seattle. Then they go out on the road for a couple of series, and hopefully somebody can cool them off. But that game the other night when they came back, I thought they were going to lose one. They gave up 2 runs to the Astros in the 9th. Verlander did, and then they came back with 2 in the bottom of the 9th to win it. That was the one that kept that streak alive. I think they took their streak to 6 at that time, and that was a huge game for them because the Indians had won and they were looking like dropping a game, and it didn't happen. So they've been on a roll, and really for the first time this year they're on a roll. They're even getting quality starts out of Mike Pelfrey, and I thought that would never happen.
Dan Wismar from Everybody Hates Cleveland. We're talking a little bit about the Tribe as they now get into the home stretch here, and they continue this homestand. We'll talk some more. Hey, we'll see what happens with the rest of this, and you and I can talk some more Tribe next week as this thing rolls on. I want to get you for a few minutes before I let you go and switch gears, talk a little bit about the pigskin. We haven't done it at all, and they have finally gotten underway. They've got about a week's worth of practices going here. Matter of fact, today's the first day off since the start of training camp for the Browns. And I will say, I haven't been down there yet. I haven't seen anything for myself, but I've talked to several people that are there, and I know this has been said publicly, but I've had people tell me it's true. If nothing else, this is the most physical they have seen the coaching staffs, any of these previous regimes in the last decade. Some of my guys that have been out there for quite a while here, since the Browns came back, the most physical and the most hard-hitting they've seen these guys get at it in training camp, which I've always thought, first-hand views of the Browns training camps, I've always thought that it was way too leisurely every season, every single season. And I got guys telling me, no, this is just how they do it in the NFL nowadays. And I just refused to believe that no teams hit each other hard, that everybody lollygags their way through training camps, because that's what I've seen so many years. And I'm not saying these guys don't work hard, but you can tell when guys are working hard and when guys are working hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think anymore in the NFL, coaches, and especially I think new coaches, which we have every other year or so, are scared to death of people getting hurt in camp.
For sure.
That's the thing that can really just, screw up your whole season. So they don't want to hit. They want to back off. And I understand, given guys like Joe Thomas, who doesn't need reps in summer camp, days off, and they're doing that. Other regimes did it. But Hue Jackson, I just like everything the guy says. He needs to find out who he's got. He needs to find out who his football players are.
Yes.
And, that's old school, that's cliche. Well, yeah, it is. But he's a new coach and wants to find out who can hit, who wants to bring it, and all those other, truisms. He needs to find out what he's got. And he says, I'm finding out. I listened to his comments to the media the other day, the last couple days. And I've read everything I could get my hands on the last couple of days about how camp has gone. And, to me, a couple of things are jumping out that pretty much everybody is saying. The first thing you mentioned, I saw people like Zach Jackson and other people who have been around the team a lot say it's the most hard-hitting, real hard live action tackling and everything else that they've seen maybe ever in the NFL camp. And the other things about individuals that are standing out. Everybody talks about Corey Coleman making a good impression. Everybody's talking about Terrell Pryor making a very good impression, making plays, and a couple of linemen.
I'll tell you what.
Hue Jackson couldn't have been more complimentary of Cam Irving in his comments the other day. Said he thinks he's been doing great. So to me, he's a huge key to this season, and I'm encouraged to hear that.
Hey, you brought up Pryor. I've heard nothing but good things about him. I saw a couple of catches that people recorded that were, I'll tell you what, if he continues to evolve, and I was reading a nice piece on him just this morning about the difference between a year ago and now, and between learning the position and having a year to practice the position and all of that different stuff. And I'm really intrigued to see what he can turn into. But I'll tell you, something we didn't get into because we didn't know if it was even in the realm of possibility. Josh Gordon gets reinstated. He's going to miss the first month of the season. And this kind of, you kind of thought this might happen. As soon as he comes back, he's basically on the shelf, because when you're out for so long and then all of a sudden you start to be told you're going to get a chance to come back perhaps even sooner than you thought, you put that work in to get ready, and now you're trying to cram it, and as you expect, you lead to tears and pulls and things like that. So now he's got the quad injury, which is going to slow him down. And with receivers, that could be something that's probably going to mess with them the rest of the season. But what were your thoughts there? Because Coleman has shown some good stuff. Although anytime I hear Coleman and Pryor are smoking Justin Gilbert, and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't tell me too much about them as wide receivers, because I think me and Dan can go out there and smoke Justin Gilbert. But when you think about that, assuming he can get healthy, adding Josh Gordon to the offensive pieces you have, all of a sudden the Browns at least have the makings of a legitimate offense.
No doubt about it. We talked about it the last few weeks. That all of a sudden, the receiver could be a strength instead of a weakness, and it can happen overnight. I'm not that concerned about Gordon. First of all, I don't think, from all the stuff that we've seen for the last couple of years, I don't remember if you saw the pictures last year when Terrell Pryor and Josh Gordon were working out together, and there were shots of them, and they were both completely just ripped, in great shape. I mean, six-pack up and down on both guys. So I didn't know that Gordon's been working out and Gordon's in shape. So it's not a matter of Josh Gordon needing to, after all this time off, needing to get back in physical condition. If he pulled a quad, he pulled a quad.
No, but it's explosive training. Usually,
anyway, but
that's what I meant.
I'm saying my concern isn't his overall conditioning. And obviously it's fortunate that you don't have to rely on him in games. I think it's a real positive that he is allowed to practice and he is allowed to play preseason.
Yes, very much so, yes.
Even if he doesn't get into preseason games until the third or fourth game, we'd certainly like to see some of it. Start working on the timing, start playing against other NFL players and seeing what you got.
If they'd have kept him out in the preseason, that would have effectively just ruined his whole season. Because if you can't be out there learning the offense, you're done.
I would agree, but now we've got the Baylor. It's funny now. I saw Art Briles at practice yesterday.
The Baylor connection, yeah.
The Baylor connection. We've got like 4 guys on the roster from Baylor, including the rookie guard tackle Drango, and they were posing for pictures and stuff yesterday. And I saw somebody who had kind of a tweet that kind of made me smile. He said, of course, after everything that's gone down at Baylor, and Briles getting fired, and everything going on with that program down in the about as low as you can go. Someone reminding us that just remember that Josh Gordon got kicked out of that program. I thought that was pretty humorous. But how bad do you have to be to get kicked out of Baylor these days? But anyway, it's I'm excited about Coleman, excited about the skill position talent they have, and running back, it looks like if not terribly deep. A solid position too with Crowell and Duke Johnson, and they like this Raheem Mostert, a kid from Purdue, has some speed. And I don't know about you, but I read a great article about Terrell Watson. Have you heard about this kid, Terrell Watson, the running back?
Yeah.
I mean, left on a doorstep when he was an infant, this kind of thing. I mean, just one of those human interest stories. A big kid. Hue Jackson had him in Cincy last year, really likes him. Powerful guy, and who knows, maybe you get a sleeper like that at some point during the season can help you. Maybe he's a short yardage guy, but he's like 6'2", 245 or something. He's a real big kid, and so you're reasonable there. I saw some people talking about, hey, why don't they sign Ray Rice? And my thought on that is, hey, probably because they've got 3 guys that are better than Ray Rice.
Oh, absolutely, that would be a silly.
I'm not even interested in going there.
To be honest with you, and I'm still intrigued by Crowell, but Duke Johnson, I want to see what he does in this Hue Jackson offense, because I've got a feeling that for all the talk about receivers and other skill positions, I think Duke Johnson has a chance to shine here, and I'm really interested to see when they start playing for real.
I agree. I think you're going to see him be what Giovanni Bernard was for the Bengals last
That's
year.
kind of my thought, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to throw the ball to him a lot, and I like the idea, too, that he loves Andrew Hawkins, and Hawkins, I understand, pulled a hamstring the other day, but he's not considering Hawkins to be just a slot guy either. He wants to use him inside and outside. Knows him, knows what he's capable of, likes him. Put Hawkins there with Gordon, with Pryor, with your running backs that can catch like Duke Johnson. And I think you do have a lot of weapons, and you know that's Hue Jackson's thing. He's going to have a varied, hopefully unpredictable offense, and assuming that you've been able to run the ball along with that, it could be interesting.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to see a little bit more. They've got the scrimmage coming up this week, and then we'll start seeing some preseason games here. As I mentioned before, we always talk about how long that gap is without football, but when the Cavs win a championship, it went by a whole lot quicker, but we've gone through it now, and now after this weekend, there's no weekends without some form of football until the month of February, my brother.
That is right, and it couldn't come soon enough. Like you say, though, it was normally we start this longing for football at the end of June. And this year, with the Indians doing so well and the Cavs championship, it's been our drought without football has seemed a lot shorter, and it is over. We have the Hall of Fame game is this weekend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no more weekends without some kind of a football game, even if it's not totally real football, you know.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to get into a little bit of college talk here. Maybe next week we can do that.
Absolutely. I was going to say I'd like to talk some defense on the Browns, talk some Buckeyes as well as they get ready to try to get back out there. A lot of talent. I heard Coach Meyer talking about some of the mistakes he realizes that he made last year.
Yeah, and he's really everybody's zeroing in on the one game. I saw Meyer's comments the other day from Big Ten Media Days, and he doesn't look back. He doesn't want to talk about last year's Michigan State game. I mean, he knows that a terrible game plan and some lousy weather and a confluence of events in that game kept him from being in the college football playoff last year. And he's going to have a young team, but they'll be hungry and super talented. So it's going to be got to go to Norman on September 17th, and that might define the season for him. But it's going to be a fun year for the Buckeyes too.
For sure. We'll talk more about that, what Coach Meyer said. We'll talk some more Browns. We'll see where the tribe's at, my man. You working on anything this week for EHC?
Yeah, I'm really just doing some Buckeye preview stuff, college football preview type of article. I'm going to get into my annual breakout Buckeye kind of a thing, and hopefully identify some players that aren't household words yet, but will be by Halloween.
Sounds good. Check it out. EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. Dan, you and I will do the thing next week.
Sounds good, J-Rocc. Good to be with you. Thanks.
You got it. My man, Dan Wismar. Again, check out his latest, EverybodyHatesCleveland.com. I'm going to crack open the phones one more time before we roll out. If you wanted to get in, here's your chance, 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535, the number to call, and we'll crack those phones open for a few minutes before we go. Dan, be back with us here next week. And what do you guys think here as we got through the first, as we mentioned today, the Browns' first day off at the start of training camp? It'll be interesting. I saw old Smiling Jimmy Haslam the other day, and doing his traditional day with the media to start things off. And I thought he, if nothing else, he was wise not to attach. Just don't even attach anything, numbers, commitments, anything to this. Let this guy go out here, and by this guy, I mean Hue Jackson. Because to be honest, guys, that is what I'm giving a chance to when it comes to the Browns. I mean, that's where the change. I'm very curious to see with this whole thing, how it shakes out from the front down. I mean, realize they completely changed everything, bringing DePodesta in and all of the things that they did. And Hue Jackson, though, is, to me, he's the crux of the whole thing, because he's coming in with a completely different mindset and a completely different attitude than any of these other coaches. And if anything, like I said, the fact of the intensity of this Browns camp, if nothing else, shows you that Hue Jackson's a smart guy. He's not coming in here to let everybody lollygag around. I mean, to me, that's just a recipe for failure. You come in here with a bunch of guys that win 4, 5, 6 games every year and just let them show up like they're owed something, like they've just got a job wrapped up. And for too many years, the top half of this Browns roster has shown up knowing that they've got a job, because there's just not anybody better, because the depth was awful. I mean, I've got no problem with undrafted free agents making it. I think those are awesome stories every year in the NFL, but it seems like some year, and I know this is an exaggeration, but it seems like half the Browns roster is an undrafted free agent the last 10 seasons. And I mean, a come from behind, feel good story is great. But at the same time, I'd rather have the guys that are kicking tail in practice, the guys that are killing it in camp. Give them a high bar to jump over, and they'll jump higher. If you lower the bar, they'll jump lower. It's human common sense, human nature, all of that stuff. And so I love the fact that he's kicked up the intensity. I don't know what to expect from these cats out there on the football field, to be honest with you. The defense, I got tons of questions. I want to see what my man Ray does with the defense here. I mean, I liked parts of Horton's stuff before, and I didn't. And I'm curious if that was a mixed mesh of coaching and different ideas or what. We'll see. But Hue Jackson is what gives me faith in what these guys can do. It's going to be a low starting point, but I do think that on offense, and man, they haven't had skill players in a long time. I mean, come on, we've been Josh Gordon deep at wide receiver for the last few seasons and nobody else. I mean, Hawkins is your next best guy, you know. I mean, to have a few skill position players, you know, hopefully, potentially in Coleman and Gordon out there at the same time. Barnage, to me, was a solid catching tight end, and you add those with Hawkins, and then, you know, one or two of these other guys that at least now your depth issues in your skill positions are in your backups, and that'll be interesting to see who can fight. How many of those camp stories can bust through? I mean, there's a lot of intrigue there. We talked about Higgins from Colorado State and a couple of the other guys that are impressing early in the offseason. So we'll see. But the skill position players, and theoretically it's going to be RG3 at quarterback unless something changes. He's gotten every rep at number one. Everything spells out RG3 is going to be the starting quarterback for this team. And, you know, with some horses out there to run with, I'm interested in seeing what creatively Hue Jackson can do. Love Duke Johnson. I know some people, and I'm not happy with what Isaiah Crowell did on his social media either, trust me. But I'm just talking about on the football field. I'm intrigued to see with those backs, as we mentioned, those couple of guys, and who comes out of nowhere to be the third back, what Hue does with them. Because Dan nailed it on the head. Gio Bernard is a good comparison to me in what you can do with a Duke Johnson, and have that guy catching 50 passes out of the backfield and being able to do a lot of different things. And you got the bubble screens with Coleman and Hawkins and Josh Gordon being able to take it over the top. There's a lot of things that you can do. Whether you like the Browns, hate the Browns, in the middle on the Browns, it doesn't matter. If you're looking at it from a football perspective, there's actual talent out there on the offense. Is there enough talent to sustain? That'll be something. I mean, when guys get hurt, what kind of depth do you got? The offensive line has all kinds of maneuvering going around. I like Cam Irving too. I want to see what he can do. So, you know, we'll see. When the games start being played, we'll get a better idea. But I like Hue Jackson, and he is the main reason that I give any hope to this current rebuild of the Browns. And I think it's a great thing, by the way, that they can, for once, be under the radar. There's nowhere near as much hype, as there shouldn't be, but there's nowhere near as much hype about training camp in general, because the Indians are doing some things. They just made a couple of big trades right at the start of training camp, too. The Cavs, all of that. And I think that's the best thing possible, because these guys don't need to be out here in the spotlight talking about winning games or nothing. They just need to get out there and do the thing. Do the training camp thing. Let Hue Jackson put his offense in. Let Ray Horton put his defense in. Let these guys just compete. Let the best 52 guys shake it out at the end of this thing. And meanwhile, we'll pay attention to the Indians, and we'll pay attention to the Buckeyes, and we'll pay a little bit of attention to the Browns. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I think it could potentially be the best thing for them. Again, it's the first 5 days, man. In the first 5 days of camp, everybody will tell you that they're having a great first 5 days of camp. Let's see where this thing rolls out to with the Browns. We're getting ready to roll out, guys. We're going to keep the phones open throughout the week, and we'll play your calls next week. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Indians still with a couple with the Twins, and then a nice weekend series with the Yankees to wrap up this homestand, and hopefully they can get back on a roll, put a little more distance between themselves and the hard-charging Detroit Tigers as well. Browns will be heading into the for their first preseason game. We'll talk some more about that. And next week when Dan joins us, we're not only going to look at the defense of the Browns and get into that, we're going to look at the Buckeyes and how their roster shakes out. Some of the guys you may not have heard of that are going to help shape the Buckeyes season upcoming and more. Dan Wismar will talk Buckeyes, football, Browns, the latest on the Indians, and so much more, baby, doing the thing. Meanwhile, hit us up all week long. Facebook, Twitter, email, phone lines. 216-539-7535. Leave your take. We'll play it live next week. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Twitter The Sports Fix CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. We'll be back with you live next week. Same bat time, same bat channel across the Sports Fix Radio Network. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. Have a great week. Enjoy the Hall of Fame game upcoming. Enjoy the Indians and the Yankees at the house this week. And we'll get back with you next week live doing the thing. We love you, Cleveland. We'll see you next week right here on The Fix.
Survival's a must on these streets. We hustle, don't sleep. Out here in Cleveland, Cleveland, Cleveland.
Okay, now here we go. Welcome to the Cleveland Show.